What's up, everybody? It's your boy Chip, back at you from RVA Vapes, and today we got a fresh one for you. It's the Smoktech TFV8 BabyV2, and this one has got a lot of cool stuff going on. Today, the much anticipated TFV8 BabyV2 from our friends at Smoktech with max mesh and antibacterial medical cotton. Customary Smoktech packaging. You got your tank here. Underneath it, you've got all your goodies. Matching O-rings with a replacement top. You notice there's no hole in that gasket. Extra coil, regular size glass. So there's a couple of new things on this tank that we want to talk about here. First and foremost, you can see it's a completely different coil. It's not a Baby Beast coil at all. It's kind of halfway between a TFV8 and a Prince, if you will. You'll notice the airflow across the bottom. Got 3 big airflow slots there. That's cool. The drip tip's different. It's more of like a Cleto style. You can see it slides over top around that top mouthpiece there. But it's double O-ring, so it's a good secure fit. Still got your lock clasp right here. But when you push it, you'll notice, where'd the O-ring go? They stuck it underneath. This is a very, very smart idea because this allows to get a good clean fit without the juice directly affecting the O-ring. So when you slam it closed like that, the O-ring's actually on top. The other thing this does that I really like is it keeps the heat further away. So you've got a whole bunch of metal here, and then you've got the gasket down there. So this should fit better, but it's also going to last longer because of the fit. Now the other thing you may notice is this is some pretty thick material they've got going on here. A little bit different than the previous generations. I feel like this has a little bit better build quality than the last couple of generations that we saw from them. You will notice the bubble tank, and I believe it holds 5 mils of juice with the bubble tank on there, so that's really cool. Now let's go ahead and open this guy up. See if we can check out the start of the show. So you see those extremely large wicking channels on the sides of the coil. Bravo for that. They added the little minimum lines. Kind of hard to see with the glare there, but you can kind of see it. They added that little minimum line right there so you can know, don't let the juice go below there. They're calling this one the A1 coil, and it says it's 0.17. It'll do 90 to 140, but they're saying it's best at 110 to 130, which sounds kind of high. But if you look down inside there, you can see the mesh. And it's a big old piece of mesh too, boys and girls. Look at that. Probably one of the bigger pieces of mesh I've seen in a tank. And it goes basically the entire length of those wicking holes. Now they've got a lot of cotton jammed in here. I don't know if you could see that extra little divot or extra spacer of cotton on the outside, and then you've got the whole cotton on the inside for the actual coil itself. So they've packed, even though it's a wide, airy coil, they've packed a ton of cotton up in this guy. So that's very cool. Now, when we unscrew it, you can see that it's a little bit wider diameter coil than the original Baby Beast was, and I think that's part of the reason they're asking for that 100 to 130 on the power scale. Throw this guy back together, and then we're going to throw some juice in this bad boy, and put it up top, grab a vape, and talk about it. So, Now that you've got a good up close look at it, we're going to pull back, have a vape on it, and talk about this bad boy. So first and foremost, we're going to throw the parameters up for you. So from tip to tail, you're looking at 54 millimeters. It's 30 millimeters wide across the glass section. I think it's 25 where the actual tank sits. And then of course, it is 5 milliliters of juice capacity. It does come in the traditional 8 amazing Smoktech colors. So I'm going to throw those up for you right meow. This guy is completely different in every form and facet. The best way I can describe it is it's kind of like a Mesh Pro and Falcon tank had a baby, and this is what came out of it. It's a really interesting design from the whole tank all the way down. Looks like a Smoktech tank, but it performs a lot better than I expected it to, honestly. First thing I want to draw your attention to is, I don't know if you can see that there, but if you look at the coils inside, you can see there's a really large cutout. And inside there, that wicking connects directly to the coil itself, which is kind of a cool feature. I've never seen wicking like this. It's reminiscent of the Mesh Pro coils, but they even took it a little bit further to the extreme where there's no extra cotton in there. That cotton that you're seeing inside past that little lip right here is actually what's surrounding the coil. They also have a little minimum line which stops right about where the cotton shelf or piece that's supposed to be there is cut off. 4 airflow slot drip tips, so you've got the stubby chimney there, and then this piece just kind of sits around it, which is interesting. They've also redesigned the top cap so that that O-ring is not on top here anymore. It's actually underneath this cap right here, which is another interesting design feature. It still has the locking mechanism, so it shouldn't open up on you or anything like that. Now it comes with the A1, which is the max mesh coil, but it also comes with this guy, which is the A2, which is the dual mesh. And we showed you in up close, the mesh is very similar to that of the Mesh Pro from Freemax. They're calling these hyper engine coils. And they also have a A3, which is a triple mesh. It doesn't come with the kit, but they are available for sale. And the wicking holes on those are a little bit smaller, so interesting choice there. And it says on the box, antibacterial medical cotton. What that exactly means, I'm not 100% sure. I believe they're referring to, they're using the same type of cotton that you would find in like a hospital or something like that. But I believe antibacterial medical cotton has some sort of treatment process going on there. Personally feel like I would much rather have an organic cotton coil. Maybe they know something I don't. I'm not really sure. So now we've got all the parameters and kind of new little features out of the way. Let's talk about what people really care about. How does this thing actually vape? And surprisingly enough, I have to say this thing vapes really nicely. You know, the Baby Beast platform has always been known for really good flavor. But the coils in this one kind of take that up to a whole nother level. The flavor on this one is up there with the Falcon and the Mesh Pro and even the original Fireloop Mesh. So flavor wise, they've knocked this thing out of the park. I've had enough time to run through the Max Mesh coil, and unfortunately I have to report that I got about 4 or 5 days of usage out of it. Pretty standard for most of the Smoktech coils. I mean, if you're getting 5 to 7 days out of a smoke coil, you're doing pretty good. Lifespan compared to like the Mesh Pro or any of these higher output mesh tanks like the Falcon M3s with the new mesh triple mesh coil that they have is about on par. I'm not really getting more than about a week out of one of those coils. So I think with the newer mesh designs and the tighter cotton that they're having to use to wick it in there, it's about on par. So it's not a step below like it used to be, which I think is a huge improvement for these guys. Surprisingly enough, with the way that the wicking is and everything, I haven't had any leaking issues with this guy. Knock on wood, which is another step in the right direction for Smoktech. You can see that it's no slouch on vapor production. And the reason that I like this A2 coil is that it's a smaller diameter dual mesh, whereas with the Mesh Pro, From Freemax, I feel like their dual mesh has a larger diameter, so you're missing out on a little bit of the flavor. With this one, they're smaller diameter coils, still reading at a 0.2, well, 0.22 on this guy, but that's close enough for Smoktech. It tops out at 80 watts, so it's a little bit lower powered version than the Mesh Pro is, which I also like because you get better battery life out of it. Now the Max Mesh, or the A1, goes up to like 130 or some ridiculously high amount of power. I never ran it that high, but I ran it upwards of 100, 110 watts, and honestly, I think that's part of the reason it only lasted me like 5 days. If I would have ran it a little bit lower, I think I would have got a little bit more life out of it. But potato, potato, you know. People want to run the coils where they want to run them, so we wanted to give it a thorough test at a real working wattage. You know, style-wise, it's everything I would expect from a Smoktech tank, but improved upon. You know, like I said, the drip tip sits on there flush. Obviously, it's a little bit different design than any of the other drip tips out there, so they want you to buy their specific drip tips, which it's not the best thing for us in the vape world, but, you know, at least it's secure on there. I think they also did it this way so that there's not as much heat transfer, so I'm a little more okay with it than I would be otherwise. The redesign of the whole top with the O-ring sitting up underneath the top as opposed to right on top of the coil there, I think is another heat transfer design issue, so that there's a little bit more gappage between the coil itself and the O-ring, because a lot of people know that that particular O-ring on the top there fails all the time. The fact that it's not leaking is a huge plus in my book, because that's always been one of the fatal flaws in Smoktech design. The 25mm diameter with the bubble glass and everything is about par for the course nowadays, so I think they did a really good job on that. Adding the little minimum line, I think, is a good step in the right direction. That makes sure that everybody knows you don't want to run this thing completely dry, because that's how you torch the coils. So adding that to the coil itself is a nice little touch, so I want to commend them for that. Anybody that's watched our reviews knows that we're not huge fans of this particular brand. Smoktech is not the best quality assurance brand that's out there. However, the last couple of products that they've come out with that we've reviewed have been progressively better and better. Want to give a nod to the Novo, which is their little pod system, and it's got the what they call Cobra finish, which is like the honeycomb resin type finish to it. Fairly well done. I have to commend them on that. I like the design and the way that thing functions. It's a nice pod system. And I think going even further in the right direction, I have to give them a tip of the cap to the BabyV2. Everything that I had issues with in the original Baby line or Baby Beast line has kind of been reworked or improved. So I give credit where credit is due. Hats off to you guys for really stepping it up. Other than that, pros and the cons, you know, the drip tip thing is a con, in my opinion. The styling could go either way. I mean, it looks very much like a Baby Beast tank, just with this bubble glass on it now. So I don't think that you can really knock them for sticking to their brand or their aesthetic. The antibacterial cotton, I think, is a con personally, just because I'm pretty sure that has to be treated in some kind of way. Other than that, I don't really have too much I can knock them about. The pros are obviously 5mm juice capacity, 25mm diameter. Those are both pros. The coils themselves, huge pros. I love the way that these coils are put together. It's the same mesh like we showed you that's in the Mesh Pro from Freemax, but just done a little bit differently. So at least they didn't completely just rip it off and replace it. They kind of took the design and tried to improve upon it, which is what we want to see. The fact that it's not leaking, huge plus. The redesigned top cap with the O-ring being further away from the actual coil, that's a huge plus. They opened up that fill channel that we showed you there, so it's a little bit easier to fill this guy. That's another plus. And all in all, as much as I don't believe it, I have to give this tank 2 thumbs up. It is really an awesome little tank. If you're looking for a mesh tank that's going to perform well at any wattage, and you want something between the Fireluke mesh and the Mesh Pro, I would highly recommend picking up one of these BabyV2 tanks from Smoktech. So That being said, we're going to throw our coupon code up right here so you can get yours for 10% off at shop.rvavapes.com. So make sure you check that out. As always, I want to thank you for watching our reviews. We've got new ones every single Saturday, so make sure you tune into that. Make sure you click the subscribe button so that way you can get all the latest info on what's going on here at the shop. And of course, if you want to smoke, that's your business. If you don't, you know where we're at.